They say cameras never lie. But that night, one camera did. At exactly 12:03 a.m., the old CCTV monitor inside a lonely roadside diner recorded something that no one could explain. A man in a black helmet stood across the counter, staring at a waitress. His posture was calm, almost too calm. Then, in a single blink of static, he vanished. But that was not the strangest part. Because 2 minutes later, when the police reviewed the footage, the waitress was still talking to him. Alive, terrified, and completely alone. A few hours before that chilling footage was taken, the diner was quiet, just humming lights, a ticking clock, and the faint smell of burnt coffee. Claire was working her last shift of the week. It was a slow night, the kind of night where even the highway outside sounded asleep. She wiped the counter, her mind drifting to the pile of unpaid bills waiting at home. Her life was a cycle of late nights and empty smiles. And this place, this diner, was the only thing keeping her afloat. Then the doorbell jingled. A gust of cold air swept in, and standing there was a man dressed head to toe in black leather, a helmet still on his head, the visor reflecting the neon open sign in blood-red streaks. He did not move, did not speak, just stood there, as if deciding whether to come in or turn back. Claire froze for a second. Something about him felt wrong. Not dangerous, just out of place. Like he did not belong in this world anymore. "Kitchen's closed soon," she said softly, trying to sound casual. He did not respond. He just turned his head toward her, slow, mechanical, and stepped inside. The bell above the door jingled again, then fell silent. His boots echoed on the tile, heavy and deliberate, like someone who had walked that same road too many times before. He sat at the corner booth. No words, no orders, just silence. Claire poured him a coffee, her hands trembling. She had served hundreds of customers, some drunk, some angry, some strange, but this man was different. His silence was not empty. It was watching her. The air felt colder now. She noticed something on his jacket, faint smudges, like dried mud or dried blood. She forced a smile. Long night. No answer. The only sound was the clock ticking toward midnight. She tried to shake it off, convincing herself he was just another traveler. But deep down, her instincts screamed something else. And when she looked up at the security monitor above the counter, she saw something she could not explain. The camera feed showed the man, still standing at the entrance. But in reality, he was sitting right in front of her. Claire's stomach tightened. She blinked hard, thinking it was a glitch. The diner's cameras were old. Sometimes they froze for seconds. But when she looked again, her heart nearly stopped. On the CCTV monitor, the biker was still at the entrance, frozen in the exact same pose, while his real body sat at the booth, motionless, as if time itself refused to move him. She turned her gaze back to the booth. The man was there. His helmet faced her, still as stone. She could hear her own breathing, shallow, uneven. The light above the counter flickered again, buzzing weakly. A strange thought crawled through her mind. What if the feed was not frozen? What if it was showing something else? She forced herself to look away, focusing on the routine. Always trust the routine. When something feels wrong, cling to the normal. That is how you survive. So she did what she always did, poured coffee. Her hand trembled so much that a drop spilled onto her wrist, scalding her skin. She gasped quietly. That sound made the biker turn his head slightly. Not much, just enough for her to see her reflection in the visor. Her terrified eyes stared back at her. "Everything okay, sir?" she whispered, trying to sound calm. A pause. Then, a voice, low and cracked. "You are still here." Her breath caught. "Excuse me." He did not repeat it. He reached into his jacket instead. Claire stepped back instinctively, her pulse hammering. For a split second, she thought he might pull out a weapon. But what he placed on the counter was far stranger. A folded note. The paper was wrinkled, stained, like it had been carried for years. He slid it across the counter toward her. Claire hesitated. "What is this?" "Read it." His tone was flat, almost lifeless. She opened it slowly. The writing was uneven, shaky, written by someone in pain or hurry. To the woman at Route 19 diner. "You saved my brother's life." Her lips parted in confusion. "Your brother?" The biker tilted his helmet slightly downward, his voice soft but chilling. "He said you gave him shelter on a stormy night 6 years ago." Her mind raced. She remembered that night. A young man, barely 20, came in drenched, bleeding from a wound on his arm. He said someone was chasing him. She hid him in the pantry and called an ambulance. She never saw him again. He made it to the hospital, she said quietly. The biker's hands curled into fists. No, he did not. Silence. For a moment, she thought she misheard him, but his next words confirmed it. He died before sunrise. Claire felt her throat tighten. I am sorry. I did everything I could. I know. He leaned closer. That is why I came. A cold shiver crept down her spine. To thank me. He paused. To see you one last time. Something about one last time made her chest freeze. What do you mean? She whispered. The biker slowly removed one glove. His hand was pale, unnaturally pale, veins dark under translucent skin. When he set it on the table, she realized it was cold, too cold. He looked up, visor still hiding his face. Do you believe in second chances? Before she could answer, the lights flickered violently. The neon sign outside sputtered and died, leaving the diner in dull red emergency glow. The CCTV screen glitched again. This time, Claire's blood turned to ice. The camera showed the biker standing behind her, even though she could still see him sitting in front. Her hand reached for the phone near the counter, but the line was dead, static hissing through the receiver. When she looked back at the monitor, the biker in the feed was moving closer, but his real body remained still. She turned around, heart pounding. Nothing. Empty air. Her trembling fingers gripped the counter edge. This is not happening. Then, a whisper behind her ear. You left him alone that night. She spun around. The biker was still seated, his helmet now slightly tilted, as if smiling beneath the visor. I did not, she cried. I called for help. He nodded slowly. Yes, but you left him before they came. Tears welled in her eyes. He said he was safe. He told me to, I know. The voice softened. He never blamed you. She blinked, confused, trembling. Then why are you here? The visor tilted upward slightly, and through the crack near the chin, she saw it. No skin. No reflection. Just darkness. He whispered, because I never said goodbye. The air turned heavy. Every sound vanished except her heartbeat. Fast, desperate, human. Then, without warning, the lights snapped back on. And the booth was empty. The cup of coffee was untouched, but steam rose from it, as if someone had just been there. Claire's knees weakened. She stumbled toward the counter, staring at the note lying on the floor. The writing had changed. Now it read, Thank you for keeping your promise. She whispered, What promise? But no voice answered. Only the faint hum of the CCTV camera filled the room again. She looked up and froze. On the screen, the biker was still sitting there. But this time, she was sitting across from him. By the time dawn's pale light crept through the diner windows, Claire was still there, frozen in the same chair, staring at the CCTV screen. The coffee had gone cold, the neon sign outside had burned out, and yet the image on the monitor had not changed. The biker and the waitress, her, sat across from each other in that frozen frame, like a photograph caught between time and death. She had tried unplugging the system twice. Each time, the feed vanished, only to flicker back seconds later, always returning to that same haunting scene. At 6 a.m., her manager arrived, unlocking the door with a tired yawn. Claire, you are still here. She turned slowly, her eyes hollow. Something happened. He frowned. What do you mean? She pointed to the screen. He walked behind the counter, glancing at it. The monitor showed an empty booth, nothing unusual. It is just static, Claire. You probably imagined something. These cameras barely work. She looked at him, her lips trembling. It was there. I saw him. I spoke to him. He sighed, half amused, half annoyed. You have been working too many night shifts. Go home, get some rest. She opened her mouth to protest, but stopped. What could she even say? That a ghost had walked in and left her a thank you note? That the cameras had shown her sitting with the dead? No one would believe her. She grabbed her coat and left quietly, the bell above the door jingling one last time. That night, the diner was quieter than ever. The manager stayed behind to close early, just as a storm rolled in. Rain hit the windows in soft, rhythmic taps. He wiped the counter, humming a tune under his breath. When he turned off the lights, something caught his eye. On the counter, where Claire usually stood, sat a small folded piece of paper. He frowned, picking it up. The paper was damp from condensation, but the writing was clear. Do not let her come back tonight. He laughed softly. Nice one, Claire. Trying to spook me. He tossed the note aside, locked the doors, and walked to his car through the pouring rain. Behind him, through the diner window, the CCTV light blinked once. The next morning, Claire returned. The storm had passed, leaving the air heavy and silent. The police tape across the diner entrance caught her off guard. 2 patrol cars sat outside, lights flashing softly. She rushed forward. What happened? One of the officers recognized her uniform. You work here? Yes. I was here last night. What happened? The officer hesitated. Your manager was found inside this morning. Her chest tightened. Is he okay? He shook his head slowly. No signs of forced entry. No struggle. But the security footage, he trailed off. What about it? She pressed. He looked at her carefully. You should see it yourself. They led her inside. The air was cold, thick with something she could not name. The manager's body had already been taken away, but his coffee mug still sat on the counter, untouched. The officer played the recording. The footage showed him closing the diner as rain poured outside. Then, at 12:03 a.m., the feed glitched. For exactly 10 seconds, the screen filled with static. When it cleared, the biker was standing inside the diner again. This time, he was not alone. He was sitting across from Claire. The same frozen image from last night. Except this time, Claire had never been there. She stepped back, her hand over her mouth. That is not possible. I was home. I was sleeping. The officer nodded grimly. That is what the timestamp says too. But the feed says otherwise. He paused, looking back at her. There is something else. He replayed the footage, slowing it down. In the final frame, before the screen went dark again, the biker turned his head toward the camera. The crack in his visor caught the light, revealing part of his face, pale, cold, and faintly smiling. And beside him, her reflection smiled back. For days, Claire tried to understand what happened. She quit her job, avoided that highway, and stopped answering calls from people who wanted her statement. But every night, at 12:03 a.m., her phone buzzed once with a private number. When she answered, there was only silence and the faint echo of a diner bell. Weeks later, she visited her old apartment to collect her things. In the corner of the living room, she found a small box left by the landlord, unclaimed mail. Inside was a sealed envelope, no return address. She opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a photograph, a still frame from the CCTV footage. The biker, the diner, and her, sitting across from him, holding his note. Written on the back, in faded ink, were 5 words that chilled her blood. Cameras never lie. But we do. She never went back to Route 19 diner. It closed a month later after a mysterious electrical fire destroyed most of the building. The footage was never recovered. But sometimes, late at night, truckers driving that same road claim they still see the neon, open sign flicker in the distance. They swear they can make out the shape of a woman standing by the counter and a man in a black helmet, watching her from the corner booth. If you ever find yourself driving that highway past midnight, and you see a diner glowing faintly in the rain, keep driving. Do not stop. Do not look inside. Because some places are not meant for the living anymore.